This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number ED-ESE-15-A-0015/0006 with Synergy Enterprises Incorporated. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Good afternoon and welcome to our Promising Program Showcase Part 3. I'm Sarah Brightwell, the Laney Training Specialist for the Office of Indian Education NAL ED project. And on behalf of the Department of Education's Office of Indian Education and the NAL ED Technical Assistance Team, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Today during the showcase, we're going to be reviewing the promising programs and leaders, providing an opportunity for all of you to ask questions and have them answered, and specifically share tips and strategies for sustaining your program, particularly around the areas of staffing, professional development, assessment, culture, and future planning. We also really look forward to hearing from all of you in our question and answer segment. So make sure and pop those questions that you have over in the chat box. And at the end of the webinar, we'll have time for Q&A. We'll also share our contact information in case you think of other questions after the webinar today. But before we get into the content, I do want to go over some of the features on our webinar screen. Our producer, Dave Mazza, will walk you through those. Dave?
There are very simple, thank you, Sarah, very simple instructions for this. Basically, you just go down to your menu bar and select that chat icon. That chat icon will pop open a window for you, and you can post your questions inside of that chat box. Sarah will be monitoring. We also have a few other folks that will be monitoring our chat throughout the event today. That's the simplest part I can ever do for you, and I'm trying to keep this very simple for all of us. So thank you for joining us, and we'll give everything back to Sarah.
Thanks, Dave. And if you have any trouble working any of that during the session or with your Zoom, you can always let us know in the chat box, and Dave can help you with the technical aspects as well. So in our first two promising program showcases, we highlighted 4 amazing native language programs in Montana and Hawaii. The Pagan Institute in Browning, Montana, which is a private K-6 Blackfoot full immersion program. We also visited the Inkusum Salish Language School in Arlene, Montana, which is a private K-8 Salish full immersion program. And then in Hawaii, we visited Kekula'o Ihunuai Kai Melino in Kona, Hawaii, which is a charter K-8 Hawaiian full immersion program, and Ka Umeki Kaio in Hilo, Hawaii, which is a public K-12 Hawaiian full immersion program. So if you haven't had a chance to view those first 2 showcases, I invite you to watch the recordings and take a deeper look into those 2 programs. And then this spring, we had an opportunity to document the great work being done in our very own NAL ED programs. So we were able to visit with Anchorage Public Schools Yupik Immersion Program, which is a public K-2 Yupik dual language program track within a school. And then also with Wadukadaring in Hayward, Wisconsin, which is a public K-8 Ojibwe full immersion program school within a school. These programs graciously open their doors to share their programs, accomplishments, challenges, and words of advice with all of you. So today, we not only will take a peek into the programs in Alaska and Wisconsin, but actually hear from leaders in all 6 of our promising programs and have an opportunity for all of you to ask them questions as well. So all of you have shown a lot of interest in learning more about existing native language programs And so before we get started, I'd really like to know how many of you have had the opportunity to visit another native language program. So Dave has conveniently popped a poll up in the middle of your viewing screen where you can indicate for us how many programs, if any, you've had the opportunity to visit in person. So you can click there. It might be that you haven't had the opportunity to visit a program, which you'll get at least a virtual visit through our webinar today. Or maybe you visited lots of other programs. So while you're taking that poll, we're going to start taking a glimpse inside our featured programs and introduce the live guests that we have with us today. So joining us live today are Darren Kipp from the Pagan Institute, and I'll let him introduce himself and his program.
Okay, Nataniko books kumape. Okay, Nataniko Sakwini Maka. Hello, everybody. I just introduced myself. My name is Darren Kipp, and I'm with the Pagan Institute. And Pagan Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded in 1987. If you can believe that, is when we first started. And the first school was opened in 1995. So there was a lot of time to plan. So I understand, just to kind of give you guys a little bit encouragement, we're going to talk today about sustainability. But before all that good stuff happens, I just want to let you know, we are a K-8 program. We do our very best, like all of you, to be an immersion program. And that is always our full goal, is to stay in the language as much as possible throughout the day. So I hope that's just a nice, simple introduction. I know we have a busy day ahead of us, and I look forward to hearing from everybody and sharing our insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. And next we have Cheney Bell from the Inkusum Salish Language School.
Gaat Pessia, Shenschluin, Kalius Quest, Tilsim Yadlaminu Cheese Gadlich, Achalaska Uke, Kudli Hulkanu Wabelston, Tilka Hulchamushin Ka Huitzult, Uke Huitzult Chika, Stsamet Kaslamti Hulshape, Yot Lukanu Wabelston. My name's Cheney Bell. I'm the Salish Language Coordinator for the Salish Kalispec Culture Committee at this time. I'm one of the co-founders of Inkusum, the Salish Language Immersion School on the Flathead Indian Reservation. So today, the school we have, I think our last count as of right now, we have 42 students at Inkusum at the Salish Language School. We go through preschool through 8th grade. We have a preschool with 2 teachers. We have K through 2 class, a 3rd through 4th, and then a 5th through 8th. There is a fluent speaker that goes into each classroom. We have 1 elder that goes into the classrooms. We also have an adult language program. So we provide language pre through 8 for students, but also for our staff. As of right now, we're doing classes online because of the pandemic. It's posed a whole nother challenge to our school, but we're continuing to teach the best we can online, and the teachers have put in a lot of work over the summer and are continuing to do a good job for students to provide language and the other needs for the students.
Thank you. Next up is Brandon Locke from Anchorage Public Schools.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Sarah said, my name is Brandon Locke. I am the World Language and Immersion Programs Director for the Anchorage School District and the Program Director for our NAL at Ed grant. Super proud of our district in general. We've had a long history of immersion programming in our district since the late 80s, but we are super happy and excited about having this as our very first Alaska Native Language immersion program. Alaska is a really diverse state overall, but we have over 20 official Alaska Native languages, and Yupik is one of the most prevalent. And so Anchorage School District, through the help of our NAL grant, launched Yupik Immersion 3 years ago. We're already up to grade 2, and our plan is to continue. Most of our other programs go through 12th grade, and so we are hoping to bring our Yupik Immersion program along all the way up through high school. We have a number of community partners as well built into our program, and if there's time later in the session, I'd like to just briefly give a shout out to our team members who are here, as well as some of our other district staff. And a quick shout out to our superintendent, Dr. Bishop, for being here. I appreciate you being here and for the support of our Anchorage School District leadership. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Brandon. Next up is Lisa Larong with Wadukadating.
Hi, bonjour. I'm Lisa Larange, and I'm the project director for the NAL Ed grant here at Wadukadating, our Nasawi Gikinuamading Middle School project. Very proud of the fact that we were able to expand to grade 8. So now we are a K through 8 immersion, Ojibwe immersion school. We've been at this for about 20 years. So we've had preschool, we hope to get back someday. We also would like to expand to the high school, and that's probably in our immediate future. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. And also from Wadukadating is Michael Sullivan.
Hey, bonjour, and Nidaway. I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to join you guys today and share a little bit about what we do. Michael Sullivan's my name. I am the linguist for the Wadukadating Ojibwe Institute, and I help out with teaching language arts classes, Ojibwe language arts classes for our middle schoolers. And I do some language coaching with teachers and curriculum development. And I also do lexical exploration with our native speakers. So that's what I'm about. But good to be here. Miigwech.
Thank you. So our Hawaiian sites weren't able to join live today, but you are going to get to meet them virtually in some of our video segments. And then we also have from the Office of Indian Education with us, Donna Sabus-Burns. Oh, Dave, is Donna able to unmute?
There we go.
There we are.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Donna Sabus-Burns, Mohawk and Tuscarora with the Iroquois Six Nations. I'm the group leader for the discretionary grants with the Office of Indian Education. It's really nice. I'm starting to see some names that I'm becoming familiar with emails, and some probably panic emails saying, I'll be right back to you. We're in the process of taking care of 3 grant competitions all at the same time, which is pretty unprecedented. So I can speak for all of us that we will get back to you if you are waiting to hear from us. You are always welcome to reach out anytime you have a question. I am your temporary program officer until we can hire some more people. We should have some vacancies coming out pretty soon, so hint, hint, if you know anybody. With Indian Preference, we are always looking for people. So again, this is a fantastic program. I'm on it for a little while and I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Sarah, and the group for all the work that you do and all the work that you do out there. All of you, we really appreciate it. And it's amazing to see what's the fruits of the labor that come about. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Donna. I know it is a very, very busy time of year right now. All right, well, now that we have introduced all of our special guests, we would like to revisit our poll and check out the results so that you can kind of see from the others on that about 40% of us haven't had the opportunity to visit another program in person. And then another good chunk really in 2 areas. You've either gone to one program or you've gone to tons of programs, 4 or more. So we've got good contingents in both of those as well. So you're going to get at least a little peek into 6 more programs today through the webinar. And again, if you weren't able to view the other 2, part 1 and part 2 of this series, I invite you to do so and get an even deeper peek into some of those programs. So, all right. So the guests that you have met today are joining us live to elaborate on our video footage, share their insights from their programs and their experiences, and answer your questions. So make sure to put those in the chat box as we go along. And as the majority of the NAL ED grantees begin wrapping up their 3rd and final year, we really think it's important to reflect on lessons learned over the last 3 years. So much has been accomplished through these projects and so many lessons learned. Throughout today, we're going to be highlighting some of the key lessons learned from our NAL ED grantees and the other 4 promising programs from their collective years of experience. These lessons learned will be key as you plan for your program's future and sustainability. So to kick us off today, I'd like to hear from all 6 of our programs as they discuss what makes their program successful and strong.
So one of the things that I think makes our school strong is that we have a community of teachers that have been here for many, many years. And I look at them as my heroes, and I totally, deeply respect what they've done because they've set the path for us to tread and to walk on. So I think that's one of the things that makes our school really strong.
I think what makes Wadukadading strong is that we always come back together to refocus on what we're doing and why we get off track. We get mad at each other and frustrated with ourselves, and feel the effects of oppression and how frustrating this all can be. But I don't think there's anything better than one day a couple weeks ago, my namesake in kindergarten, his mom showed me a video where he and some of the other students had taken all the play items in the kitchen and set up a feast the way that we do our traditional feasting. And they set it up, and he stood up and gave a talk just like the adults he's seen do that. And I think at the end of the day, when we're frustrated and sad and beaten down, that you think about those moments and that there is a bigger purpose than learning some math concepts or science concepts. And it's that those children feel confident standing up and giving a speech in front of people. They're confident in knowing these ways are important, and those are the things that make us strong, and they make us want to continue doing what we're doing.
The language and the kids, and like I said, it's out there, and some jealousy out there. The kids get to go hunting, they get to make moccasins, they make outfits and things like that, you know. It just spreads out, and besides, we got those dictionaries we show them, and we're the first ones, like a flower just coming up, you know. Oh, there's some goosum. Then it starts spreading out, you know. And that's where it started from. That's where it started from. Goosum. Then everybody knows on this reservation, Goosum School. And even the people that's sending USP or whatever you call it, they come here. They know where Kusum is, you know, bringing our stuff in here. You know, even some white teachers that work here, they want to learn how to talk.
To me, it's the fact that all these kids' parents trust us with their kids 8 hours a day to teach them their language. And at Amshimishai, not just the language, we teach them everything that goes along with it. And Kutlaman, like we call it, our ways. And that the parents are really good, the ones that send their kids here, the ones that are still here, the ones that have been here for years. The parents trust in us is one of the big things. The kids is wanting to learn. Because a lot of them really work hard for me, for Alan. They love his class. I mean, everybody likes making things. The fact that we got the staff that are passionate about the language, and like it's not just language, but culture, teaching them respect, all that. I think myself being here makes a difference because I'm still young, know the language, I can write it. I could have went anywhere else, made way more money doing what I'm doing, but I said no. I promised myself to these guys. You know, I'm going to be like Patalik, I'm going to be here forever. That's all I can really think of. Most of it comes back to those parents.
I think it's the passion of the teachers here on this campus. I think if you look around, I don't know if you observed today, a lot of the kids really, a lot of the teachers really care about their kids. Like it's a family environment. It's not your number and you're just another kid, and you know, it's that concept of, and it's the concept of the Hawaiian culture that we're all a family, and every kid is like our own kid, and we treat it as such because we don't want to see our kids to fail. We want our kids to survive. We want our kids to be successful. We want our kids to do well, not in just Hawaiian language, Hawaiian culture, but in life in general, to have that whole kid be successful when they leave this school. So that passion in every teacher on this campus to make sure that they're protected, they're loved, and they're cared for here. I think it's special because in the end, we have some teachers who are students here have come back and become teachers, and it shows that they were nurtured well here on their campus. In fact, we just had an incident, a group of students on Friday. They went to a class at the community college, and you know, we always worry about our secondary students because you know they're going through a lot of hormonal changes and stuff, and you know they get into mischief. But we got an email from one of the instructors saying how well behaved our kids are, and it's just a testament to what we do on our campus and how we instill culture and how we instill all the values here. But it shows with our kids, but it starts with us teachers first, and by showing them that we care, and we scold them, but we scold them with love, and they understand that. So I think that's why it's so different from everything else, other schools. Yeah.
So as you listen to the programs describe their strengths, I hope that you are also beginning to think about your own programs and your strengths. What makes your program successful? What are those elements that are particularly key to your success? And as you think about those, I really invite you to share those over in the chat box for your own program. What are those things that make you a particularly strong and successful program? So share those in the chat box. And I know I always love hearing from everyone both in the chat box and in the videos. And I hope you noticed kind of a recurring theme in the video about, you know, really the passion that the staff and the students have for the learning and for this work. So as you think about sustaining your current program, it's important to keep these key elements that are what make your program so special at the forefront of your planning. Sometimes sustaining can often mean that you might have a lower budget, you may have some changes in your staffing or tweaks to your program design. But what you don't want is to lose your special sauce that makes your program work so well. At this point in the grant cycle, you all have a mind towards sustainability planning. So let's bring up a quick poll to check where everyone is in this work. So this should also magically appear in the middle of your screen. And you can indicate, you know, where are you currently with that sustainability? It is an anonymous poll, so you can respond at will. Are you all set? Everything is all planned for sustainability. Your program is going to continue just as it is now. Maybe you haven't really started that sustainability planning yet, or you're somewhere in one of those middle categories. While you're voting, I want to share some of the things that, you know, really make our program successful. So make sure to pop those in the chat box. All of you have amazing programs. So I really want you to think about, you know, what makes your program special and share that with us. Now, before we launch into more detail regarding sustainability planning, let's look at the results from our poll, because I think most of us have had an opportunity to vote. All right, it looks like about a third of us feel pretty good with where you are with sustainability planning. You've got a plan, you're ready to move forward. And then the other largest chunk is really in that modified but continuing. You are making some tweaks, you are making some changes, but you have a plan in place. And then a good chunk still in that middle. You know, we're working on it, we're exploring our options, we're working out the details of that plan. And hopefully some of our tips today will help you as you're working on that plan. All right, so let's take a moment to hear a few thoughts on sustainability.
You know, program sustainability in Indian country is like, oh my, you know, that is huge, okay? It's not, we're unique in the sense that we're celebrating 30 years. You can look up groups like Seventh Generation Fund, Akwesasne Freedom School, you know, that are like 40 years old. I believe Seventh Generation Fund's maybe 40 years old. There's not too many of us out there like that at all. We're really a rare breed in that sense. So in terms of sustainability, I really say this, is that in order to reach those 30-year marks, in order to have those kind of benchmarks where you have an alumni return back to your school to begin to be teaching now, you know, student, now the teacher, you've got to stay within your values, okay? Whatever your organization has as a value and whatever its goals and mission are, you have to just kind of keep that in check. And that's why I would go back to that idea of mission creep, because all of a sudden you can find yourself doing something totally different than what you started out doing. And that's literally just because there's money available for that. So sustainability, I would say, is not easy, okay? And you've got to have, and I'll just say this, for any program, you have to have people who are committed, okay? It's like the old Chris Rock, you know, the comedian, the philosopher Chris Rock says, you know, person who has with a job has too much time in their day, okay? The person who has a career doesn't have enough time in the day. These folks all in this building, they have careers. So that's how you sustain it. That's my job. That's the job as administrators, is to make sure that staff is in career mode, not job mode. So if you want to sustain a program, you've got to create that kind of environment. You have to be innovative. You have to be creative.
My neck is white.
in terms of thinking about the future and the sustainability of the program, I think that the really solid professional development that we built in early on was a critical piece to the success of the program. And we have a structure in place now, and we've got the materials to get us going. And so at this point, it's really about maintaining and continuing with the translation of the next grade level one at a time. But like any new program, word of mouth has to be out there.
I guess my advice for people considering starting something like this, I would encourage them to just gather people that share the vision. And of course, we all know human nature, there will be debates and arguments, but with the strong mission, everyone will come back to it and support or take a break and come back. I've seen a lot of things happen over the last 20 years with our crew of people.
All right, so we're going to follow some of the thoughts that you heard in that video as we go throughout today, especially in regards to using the structure and resources that you've been able to develop through your NAL ED grant and honoring what really makes our programs special. So the Pagan Institute and NCUSM have both been in operation for decades. So we're going to talk with Darren and Cheney about how they've been able to sustain their programs for so long. So first, let's talk with Cheney about how they've been able to sustain it in NCUSM.
So, for us, we've been really blessed with our tribal council has provided at least up to 70 to 80% of our funding for the whole time we've been open since 2002. But we've also continued to fundraise. We've done some major fundraising endeavors. We've written a lot of different grants. We've applied and got ANA grants for a couple of years. We've applied through foundations. Fundraising is something we're always doing. We still, to this day, we just received another donation from a foundation that's helping us do some adult language training and some video work. So you really, to stay sustainable for a long time, you need support from somebody that's going to support you more than yearly. The hardest thing about year to year is that stress of where is your money going to come from. So really working hard towards finding people that will continue to fund you for multiple years. That's why ANA, something like that helps. It's usually 3 to 5 years. If you can find a foundation that will commit really up to 5 years, it'll really help the work that you're doing. And if your tribe can put some money, that's the best. If your tribe can commit to keeping your language alive, that's the most important, is that on a tribal level, you're getting those tribal funds put into saving and keeping your language alive.
Thanks, Cheney. And how about you, Darren? How have y'all been able to sustain for such a long time?
Cheney had a great point of building partnerships, and we're in a unique situation because we don't solicit state or federal money, and even tribal money. So we kind of have we have a real narrow definition of who we can approach for funding over the years. And so we've had to build really strong relationships with foundations, individuals, and the community as well. That's really important. And so I really believe, and I really stress this approach of collaboration with generosity equals prosperity. And for us, prosperity is the creation of a new speaker. And so that is really important when you talk about building those partnerships. And one of the things that brings sustainability for us is we're very inclusive in our approach, not only on a community level, but also on a national and international level. We work with groups from all over Canada, just everywhere. So I think that is another point that's really important, is to be inclusive in your approach, not only when we build resources that we put out in the community, but also within ourselves. And, you know, I wanted to just kind of share this story. Years ago, I was at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and Vine Deloria was receiving the American Indian Visionary Award from Indian Country Today. And, you know, it was a great event. It was, you know, place was packed. The who's who of Indian country was there. And it was just a wonderful evening. And Vine Deloria was, you know, of course, himself, just brilliant and fantastic. And at one point when he was giving his speech and acceptance, he said, you know, he talked about all these organizations and initiatives and things he'd worked with over the years. And at one point he said, you know what, but I got to say this. He said, my friend, John Echohawk, is in the crowd tonight. And he said, you know, anyone that can keep an organization going for 30 plus years, that's who deserves this award. And he said, you know, John Echohawk deserves this award, not me. And he was really, you know, and that was really a powerful moment, because, you know, if you look at NARF and Native American Rights Fund, I was looking, they're 50 years old. That is incredible. And so you have to sit there and go, well, how did they do it? That's, you know, that's kind of my thing too, is saying how they do it. And it goes back to that idea. And the first part of our presentation is you get those principles and that core. And ours are this, and everyone knows this, even our foundation folks we work with, our donors, our students, our staff, our parents, our community. One, never ask permission to teach your language, okay? Two, never debate the merits of teaching your language. Three, respect the power of the language you're teaching, all right? And four, show, don't tell. Don't waste your time talking about what you're gonna do it. Because we know this in our Native communities, here today, gone tomorrow, okay? So we're used to that. So that's why those have been our 4 rules. I inherited these 4 rules from Darren Kipp, and you guys all know my father was one of the biggest advocates for language revitalization and immersion programs. He was, you know, on his pulpit telling everyone, just do it. Why? Because it makes a big difference in your community. And I share this when we talk about sustainability. It's not easy, we know that. Burnout is real. We ourselves, we have, and throughout our history, our program, at one point we went to a half-day program just to survive, just because we were having a tough time raising money, just different things. So we've always been able to adapt. That's one thing we are just beautiful at as Native people. We've learned to adapt to many things. And so when we talk about sustainability, from our view, we say it really comes from finding your rules and sticking with them, and then passing those on to the next generations. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, and I think you really drive home a point that we heard, you know, in the video, and then also from Cheney before you, how important it is to really be true to your mission, you know, even if it means not being able to qualify for a certain funding source, that, you know, just chasing the money can lead you away from your entire purpose of the program and the goals. So it's so important, yeah, to have those principles, that mission that's really driving you, and just keep going.
And I'll share this last little thought. I know a lot of the organizations right now are getting ready to do refunding, and Ms. Burns talked about how busy she is and everything else. So I think that's one thing, how you can attract those reviewers and talk about it, and show that passion that we've talked about, but also that approach of sustainability. Hey, this is our mission. These are our core principles, and we just keep this as our foundation. And it is about building that strong foundation. That sounds kind of cliche, but it really does work, because even in our toughest times, we go back to our 4 rules, and it kept us true to our mission.
Yeah, and it might feel cliche, but we have cliches for a reason. Sometimes they just work. All right, so as I mentioned before, no matter where you currently are with your sustainability planning, it's really vital to try and keep these elements in place, being mission driven, having the principles of your program. And I love some of the things that you shared over in the chat box, so I want to be sure and call some of them out. You know, I'm seeing that Charlene and Daisy both were sharing about the connections that they make with their students and with their families. And then lots of programs sharing how important their teachers are. Daisy and Crystalline and Leanne all sharing how important their wonderful teachers and staff are, which I think is something that I've really seen across the board with all of your programs, is this incredible dedicated team that you have working. And then Lorena making a great point that I've seen live in her classroom about, starting with basic speaking and how she really works on making sure that the kids can understand before they really start diving into the work. And then also as we go down, I see Susan sharing about, their team really includes not just herself and the teachers and instructors, but also the elders and the students, and how supportive their district has been of their program. And let's see. And then Ricky sharing about his experiences working with Native advisory committees. So lots and lots of great information over in the chat box. So if you don't have that open it up and take a look. But we really want to be able to continue building upon this very success that you've seen. So I want to bring on Brandon and Lisa, the project directors from our 2 NAL ED programs, so that they can share how they plan to build upon their success. So we'll start with Lisa. What are you most proud of, or has been the most important that you've been able to accomplish through this project for Waduka-Dotting?
There have been a lot of things, a lot of accomplishments. As you know, we had a pretty big, ambitious project. So, and I would like Mike Migazzi to talk too, because he did a lot of really, really important work for establishing like grade level assessments for our students. So, and we know that it takes many years to build that proficiency of our students. So, so originally I thought my answer was going to be just 8th grade, that we added it, but really it's all these other accomplishments of the activities and the objectives that were in this project. They were all very dependent on each other, and the assessments are really essential to knowing how well our students are learning academics and the language. So
yeah, and it sounds simple sometimes to say, oh, we added 8th grade, yay, but there are lots of other things that have to be in place in order for that to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's been very, very busy. Well, and what do you think, what are your next steps? How's the program going to progress over the next years?
Well, we don't want to lose the momentum of this having 8th grade, so we just want to keep going. We need to have high school too. It's always been our dream to have a pre-K to grade 12 educational experience for our students, like many of our staff, our parents, and we want this for our children. So it's really important that we keep building.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we're going to dive into assessment a little deeper momentarily, because I think that is something really neat that y'all do and have worked really hard on as well. Mm-hmm. What about you, Brandon? For the UPIC Immersion program, what are you most proud of accomplishing through this project?
Thank you, Sarah. So me personally, I'm so proud of just our program in general. I have learned so much. I'm happy that I'm able to give my background and expertise on language acquisition and assessment to the program, but I have learned so much from the teachers and others that are in our program, in the trenches. And that I see this as a true partnership. The commitment, the love, the passion of everything that has gone into the blood, sweat, and tears of prepping for and being in the trenches of and just sort of going with the flow in the moment. And then of course all of the challenges that occur along the way. Last 2 years ago we had a large earthquake, and then of course COVID hit, and we just keep persevering. And I appreciate what the other speakers have said today too about just that you've got to have that vision, you've got to have that drive, and you've got to maintain with the vision of continual improvement, but also advancement. Constantly looking for funding sources or partnerships. Partnerships are key. And then thinking outside of the box and fighting the battle of, state requirements and looking at alternative pathways for teacher licensure in Indigenous languages, I think is really important. But I'm also really, really proud of just our Anchorage School District in general. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a long history of immersion programming, but they're all languages that are considered more commonly taught. French, German, Spanish, for example, but even Russian, Chinese, and Japanese. And so I'm really proud of the fact that ASD has embraced developing and implementing the first Alaska Native language immersion program and completely supporting it along the way. And just in terms of sustainability, I just want to add one more piece. With those partnerships, we're also very lucky to have two non-public school preschool programs. One is for ages birth to 3, and one is for ages 3 to 5. And those programs are and have been solid partners in our program and really have provided this sort of natural pipeline into the public school setting. And so really, really proud of that. We are a huge urban school district, very, very diverse. And I'm so proud of the fact that we've got this program in our district.
Yeah. Well, and what are the next steps for the UPIC program?
Similar to what Lisa said, constantly improving and expanding. We're only up to grade 2 right now, but as I mentioned earlier, our program right now is at College Gate Elementary, which is a K-6 school, and we want to get through grade 6, and then we want to transition into a continuation model at the middle school and high school levels. And we do have other existing programs in place that we can model after, and luckily have gone first to see what has worked and what hasn't worked, and sort of those kinks have already been worked out. So really now it's just a matter of continuing to recruit staff and students and continue that professional development, but also don't lose sight of the passion that has already been put into place at the elementary level, especially those primary grades. And really proud of the fact that the teachers have embedded so much Alaska Native culture into the program that really needs to continue into those upper grades, and then of course into the adolescent years of middle and high school.
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing, and we're excited to see as both the programs continue to grow. So I want to kind of pose the same question to all of you. So what is it that you're most proud of accomplishing through your NAL ED grant, through your project that you've been implementing? So share that over in the chat box. I've put the question over there for you as well, so you can start sharing there. And as you've been hearing the key elements of these promising program sites, I think you probably noticed one of the themes has been staffing. Your team of educators is really vital to the success of your program, and every single program ends up mentioning this, whether it's in these clips and interviews or just when we go around and visit programs. So we're going to take a peek in and hear some key considerations as you plan for sustaining your current staff and securing the staff that you'll need as you progress into the out years.
How we've attracted good teachers and good people and good family and good students over the years is, we've really stuck to our principles, okay? And one of those principles is, we just don't debate the issues, okay? We don't debate the merits of teaching your language. If you want to debate that, go somewhere else, because you're not going to get that from us, okay? We just don't have time for that, because we already know and already understand that when you teach a child a second language, what goes on up here in the brain is phenomenal. Okay, we know that. The neuroscience proves it. Okay, so we're not going to have those debates. We're not going to get into the merits and the beauty of the Blackfoot language. Okay, we're just not going to waste our time doing that. We're going to focus our energy in other ways. Another one of our guiding principles is we show, don't tell. We're action orientated. We don't sit around and talk about, oh, hey, we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. No, we sit around and talk about this is what we're going to do, okay? So we become very action orientated here, okay? And that's that part of that show, don't tell mentality. So that's an attractive trait that this organization has just within itself that attracts teachers. Because they say, hey, there's an institution has some guiding principles and it has some approaches that I can agree with. Okay, don't debate education. Oh, no one, who's going to debate that in America? It's the greatest equalizer out there is education. Okay, we know that. So we're not going to debate that. We know teachers aren't going to debate that. So we kind of create that atmosphere here in terms of the way we approach work is, hey, you come to work here, you've got to be action orientated. You've got to be bringing a solution to the table always, okay? And you can't be one of these folks that's a malcontent that sits around and debates everything. You will not do well here. We've had plenty of people come through the doors here and they don't do well. Why? Because first of all, in the language world, you have to have collaboration and you have to have generosity if you want to have prosperity, okay? And prosperity is the revitalization of your language being spoken by another generation. But to get to that point, you've got to be a collaborator and you've got to be generous. And if you're not those two people, you don't make it in this kind of work, okay? So that right there kind of separates, kind of separates folks out right away. Not everybody can do this work, okay? And we know that. And so in terms of attracting people, it's really, again, going back to that idea of just sticking within your values as an organization and then sticking with your goal, and your goal is to create speakers.
We have a challenge in finding proficient staff who are licensed and trained. So we'll either have people who are interested in being in our setting and don't speak any Hawaiian, but they have the pedagogy, they have the background on teaching. And then we have the people who are proficient in Hawaiian, but they don't have the background in the education. So in education, they don't have the training or a license. We have those two groups. Luckily, recently, to the pool of proficient speakers, we've added graduates of our school. So that's really a huge, huge step forward because the pool got a little bigger. But finding people who live in Kona, who speak Hawaiian is, they're all here at the school. And then to add a layer of, and they're licensed and know how to teach is another additional layer that makes it near to impossible to find. So we have to recruit from the programs, and right now it's at UH Hilo or UH Manoa. We have to send away our kids to get their licensing, and usually we end up losing them. Right now we have two that I know of, former students who are, one was at Hilo, one is at Manoa, but they're growing roots in their areas and haven't come home yet. So it's a real challenge, and what we've done, we went through a population boom in 2003. We had all these kids, we were established as a school and all these kids enrolled, and we had to put positions into place. We didn't have the proficient and licensed staff, so we brought on a lot of English-speaking staff, and we went through an identity crisis. We were being considered a bilingual school, and people really didn't know, okay, what are they doing? Are they doing English and Hawaiian? Are they an immersion school? And so we went through a struggle because there weren't people here, but we always maintained that focus. Okay, we're an immersion school, and when we have the staff come, we'll get on that path. And we've been adding on to our fully immersed classes. For a while, it was K-5, This year we added on 7th. So we're K to 7 now, entirely through the entire day. They're in Hawaiian, they're being taught in Hawaiian, and then we'll keep adding thereafter.
Our inaugural year, we were very lucky because our kindergarten teacher, as well as our program coordinator, were both teaching at a charter school here in Anchorage, both of whom are native Yupik speakers, and were recruited heavily to come to this program. And really the two of them have been the rock of the program. We were fortunate to find a first grade teacher from a village close to Bethel, also a native speaker, and also an experienced teacher. And so we are constantly recruiting and are constantly looking for teachers, and we try to do that a year in advance. So this entire school year, we have already been, scouting out, looking for our second grade teacher for next year.
Fortunately, located right up the hill from us is a teacher training program, particularly for native Hawaiian language speakers and for immersion schools through the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Kahakaula o Kelikolani is a program at the University of Hawaii at Hilo that trains teachers to teach in an immersion setting. However, despite that, we still don't have enough teachers across the state. And so when we get up into our high school, our secondary area, what we've done is we've decided to hire strong teachers who are also willing to learn the language. And so we provide them with Hawaiian language classes with the intent of increasing their Hawaiian language skills, because we believe it might take a little longer to acquire the necessary teaching skills and content knowledge in, for example, calculus or algebra or science. And so that's sort of what we've opted until we start pumping out more science and math teachers at the secondary level who can also olelo Hawaii and also have a real commitment to do something different, to get outside of the classroom and to teach science in the environment.
So having the staff that you need for your program takes planning, preparation, and near constant recruitment. As you look forward toward the future of your program and begin planning for how many staff you'll need each school year, whether due to anticipated program growth, just normal teacher attrition, or potential retirements, the sooner that you start planning and recruiting, the more likely you are to have the staff that you're going to need. Additionally, a lot of our programs have found great benefit in finding staff who have a true heart and passion for the work, and then providing the professional development that they need to be successful in this field. And this can also really help with your staff retention. So we're going to hear from a few of the programs about the types of professional development that they've been able to provide for their staff, as well as some of the innovative teacher training programs that they've developed to grow their own staff. As we're watching, I really want you to think about, how might this work for you? Is this something that might be beneficial? And we'll talk a bit more.
When writing the grant proposal, we were very cognizant of building in some really key professional development opportunities for the staff, not just the teachers, but the teaching assistant, the principal, and actually other teachers in the school district were able to participate in that in terms of sharing and collaborating with our new Yupik team. So one of the things that we did was we went to Bethel and visited their Yupik Immersion program there. We're able to meet teachers, talk to the principal, observe classrooms, look at materials. We were able to go to one of the Hawaiian immersion programs in Hilo. And Hawaii has been doing Hawaiian revitalization for a good 40 years. They've got a really, really great statewide model. And so taking a look at their program from their pre-K all the way up to a PhD level at their university system was very eye-opening. And we've partnered with some really top-notch language immersion experts and professors around the country in terms of either bringing them up for professional development workshops or sending our team to participate in a workshop that was already pre-scheduled.
Language teacher program, we bring in trainees to sort of shadow lead teachers and help out in the classroom, aides if you will. And with those aides, they're either not very proficient, but far along in their educational program to where they're nearing a teacher certification in some given institution nearby. Or they're very far along in their language learning and really new in the certification process. So some of our aides fall into one of those categories. So with the ones that aren't very proficient, they spend time with somebody who's much more proficient than them and sort of shadow them, take notes. We provide classes, explicit language classes and tutoring. And so with our language trainees, with our language teacher trainees, we assess them every year, typically late fall, to see where they're at with their language ability. And we've seen some pretty substantial growth among many of them. So their language assessment is a sort of formal assessment. It's just oral communicative assessment. It has nothing to do with reading or writing, where we sit down in an interview style. So it's modeled after ACTFL's, this American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, a massive organization in the field of language assessment, language proficiency assessment. So we use ACTFL's OPI model, the oral proficiency interview, though we modified that as well to make it more Anishinaabe-centric, as well as our language guidelines, our proficiency guidelines. We've written all our own language proficiency guidelines. So with those interviews we do, those are one-on-one. So rather, when we work with the kids, it's 2 at a time. With the adults, it's just 1 at a time. And we'll basically sit down, record as natural as we can, conversation between myself and the trainees. Good thing is I know all of them, it's the same thing with the kids, I have an established rapport, which makes it a little more comfortable and a little more natural. Though it can be pretty awkward, especially everybody sort of insecure of their language ability. Everybody, from our best speakers to our newest speakers, everybody's insecure. So it can be kind of awkward, can be kind of stressful, but we try to make it as natural and not very high stakes. It's basically to inform us of what we're doing and what's working, and to inform our trainees as to what they can do to improve and climb up the proficiency scale. So we're always resetting our goals around here on where we want to be personally. So we have some really self-driven, motivated language trainees who are doing one heck of a job, picking up Ojibwe at a pace we've never seen before. Everybody that I knew who spoke Ojibwe as a second language took them at least 10 years before they got very, very good at it. Whereas these trainees are picking up Ojibwe within a year or 2, very functionally proficient in Ojibwe. So it's definitely working, though we're always looking for ways to improve it. Yeah, so we'll do, with our language trainees, we'll do a lot of coaching in the form of classes. Observations, I think, are really helpful. So we'll sit in classes while they're teaching and just take notes. A lot of times those notes will include vocabulary, specific vocabulary for the content areas that they're teaching, and then other sort of grammatical notes, on what they could be saying better, more accurate in Ojibwe, and then meeting one-on-one and sort of coaching them through that process, giving them notes, giving them resources, handouts, recordings, whatever it may be for their own sort of personal learning. And then we do offer classes, through our teacher training program, where they actually get college credit for taking classes, which help, I think, with their proficiency as well. I think a lot of times we get stuck in a rut. If we're teaching in a classroom, we're mainly focused on the language we need for day-to-day to survive in the classroom, whereas we may be at a loss for terminology or much linguistic ability outside of the classroom. So trying to maintain a sort of holistic approach to language learning so it lives beyond the confines of the school.
That's the first part in the morning, is that we're able to get those hours in that maybe we did not get to get on the weekend or in the summer. This is a good time where we're able to learn in the classroom and get those classroom management skills, and be able to not only help the students, but the students are able to help the teachers also, be able to say the word, know what the word means, and then in the classroom, the teachers can take what they learned from that elder and implement it into what they're teaching.
Well, first of all, if you're not a speaker, you need to be in a classroom when it's being taught so that you can advance and become a language teacher. You know, don't just come in here and say, oh, I'm going to go there and do this. You have to be in a classroom. And sometimes a lot of our people can speak the language, they just never done it. And so you got to bring that out of them. And they got to feel comfortable. And they got to feel good about it. Because like so many times, oh, what are you trying to talk Indian? You know, just stuff like that makes them like quit, you know. So anybody that comes here, I try to teach them everything that I know, that they can carry on if I leave or something, you know. They still get those calls though, you know, how do you do this, how do you do that? But, you know, I enjoy it. I enjoy being here and teaching other teachers how to teach, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so in our poll earlier, many of you indicated you either haven't been able to visit another program or maybe only one program. So it can be difficult to visit programs in person right now, and often it's not in our budget, even during more travel-friendly times. But a virtual visit might be possible and might even be more feasible right now than normal. So, reach out to programs that you're interested in learning more about and inquire about the possibility of a virtual program visit or to chat with one or more of their senior educators. We do have on our resource database that listing of other programs across the nation that are engaged in language learning work. The other idea that we heard in the clip was to really grow your own educators. So I love that idea of using the fabulous staff that you already have and then other available resources to build the language and teaching skills and help staff secure teacher certification. So we have Dr. Michael Sullivan, the linguist for Waduka Dotting, that works extensively with the teacher trainees with us today. So if you have questions for him, make sure to pop those in the chat box. But in the meantime, Mike, I'd like to know how effective you found your teacher training program for both producing effective educators and proficient Ojibwe speakers.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, so there's nothing worse than seeing yourself on camera, right? So, holy man, why did I wear that hat when you guys were filming? Anyway, to be quite honest with everybody here today, our program, the way we're doing it, is really a double-edged kind of thing. I think it's great from the second language proficiency development standpoint. As I mentioned in the video, some of our trainees have learned Ojibwe faster than anybody I've ever seen. I've done a lot of assessments in other Ojibwe communities. We're a pretty widespread, widely spoken language, widely spoken tribe. So I've been just about everywhere Ojibwe is spoken and done assessments, and the pace that I see these trainees setting is unbelievable. And, I think that's greatly due to the fact we throw them right in the deep end. You might get a year, if you're lucky, 2 tops of shadowing a proficient teacher. You're kind of their aide for a while. But then after that, congratulations, you have the job, and now you're in the deep end of the pool and it's time to swim. So what we've seen is a great number of those trainees really rise to the occasion and pick it up really fast. I think one thing that's working for us is we allow our teachers, the trainees, to create with the language without overcorrection and without what I call parrot-based approaches. I've seen a lot of second language learners crippled in this sort of parrot arrangement where they're just mocking the words that somebody else says, and they, kind of like a full-time parrot, but they never have that demand to create spontaneously on their own, which is where real growth happens, is through that communicative engagement with the language. So I think it's great for the teachers to be able to learn on the job. We don't really have a mainstream teacher prep program that'll prepare you for work at Waduka Dotting. So by being by being in the classroom, by being in the deep end, and while taking classes, they kind of tackle both of those issues, their licensure and their language proficiency. And in all honesty, you know, I think our approach may not be the best from a academic standpoint, because what it results in is having teachers who aren't as proficient as we'd hope them to be in the start. So I think, you know, prior to having this arrangement, we had teachers in the trenches for a long time, and they were very highly proficient. And then dealing with teacher burnout, you know, we had to bring in a new sort of crop of teachers, and growing pains are real. You know, that's the kind of thing. We're growing fast, and we're picking up steam, and there's pains that go along with it along the way. Your great speakers won't be here forever, your greatest speakers, and we need to kind of fill those shoes as quick as we can. And I think the only way to do that is to be live with that demand of spontaneous language use, which is why I think we see the growth. So that's, you know, what I have to, how I feel our program has been the most effective is really, really rapid. If you know anything about Ojibwe, and all of our languages, I suppose, are equally complex, but Ojibwe is right up there, you know, with Blackfeet. You know, I know Mr. Kipp out there in Montana, and their language, I think, is even more morphologically complex than ours. So he knows the headaches of that work like we do. So lot different from majority language learning, where you can watch your soap operas in whatever language that is, or listen to it on the radio. You know, our endangered indigenous languages are a little bit more of a beast to tackle as a second language. So we're seeing some amazing success, and I'm very, very proud of our trainees for how far they've come.
Yeah, it's been really a joy, even for me, to watch their progress over the last 3 years as I've come out and seen their teaching progress. It's been amazing. So what recommendations would you give to a program that might want to launch this sort of training program?
Yeah, I say number one, define success internally. What does success mean for your community, for your school? And set your goals based on that. You know, when you reach your goals, reset them. What I don't like to see is people who impose mainstream or colonial definitions of success, and then constantly try to match that or replicate that in their own indigenous space. The way I see it, and I think a lot of educators on our team see it, is school is so much more of an opportunity to foster identity in these kids, and create, you know, good people for our community, the people that care about the shape of our communities. And I think that's the most critical thing we have while we have these kids with us in our time at Wadukodaaning, is when they leave Wadukodaaning, they know who they are as Anishinaabe, and they're proud of that. And that carries them to places, you know, we could only have dreamt of when we were kids. So I think that success has to be defined internally. Don't chase test scores with your monolingual counterparts. It's not about test scores. It's not about academics based on a Western colonial model. Define that for your community and pursue that. That's the number one recommendation I have.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's a really important recommendation. And it honestly conveniently leads us into our next conversation. So another key to sustainability that's been discussed is ensuring that you have the resources that you need to continue your program. So a lot of the grantees have really worked very hard to develop or refine their native language assessments for their program. And it's really been a key to their sustainability planning as well, having that already in place, because many funding sources and educational entities expect that your program is going to have a way to measure progress, whatever that might look like. And for NAL ED programs, it's been especially important to have a way to assess language learning process. So having this element developed through the grant provides you with a key resource that you can now use moving forward without the time and expense of that initial creation piece. So I think most of you will continue some refining as you move forward, of course, but it's very helpful to have a solid tool in place that you can use throughout the span of your program. This can even help you when you're applying for future funding. So we're going to cut to a video showing just some thoughts and ideas and sharing about some of the resources and assessments that have been developed by the programs. But, really keep in mind what Mike was just talking about, really defining your own success and, how does that relate to this idea of language assessment?
Developing a language proficiency assessment is a critical piece of any language program. And for several years, our district, the Anchorage School District, has been working with Avant Assessment out of Eugene, Oregon. And they have an assessment called STAMP, which is a proficiency-based, web-based, and adaptive language assessment that measures proficiency skills in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And they have developed that STAMP assessment in multiple languages. We have purchased that assessment in all of our existing language programs and wanted to make sure that we had something very consistent for UPIC as well. And so actually our team, our instructional team is working with Avant to develop a UPIC STAMP test as well. So that we'll be able to measure students across the district with kind of the same tool. And we use that data to really guide our instruction so that we can find out where the students are with their language proficiency levels and where, maybe where we're challenged and where we need to increase in terms of instruction. So the STAMP assessment is really designed for students probably around grade 2 and above. In fact, they have 2 versions of STAMP. The 4SE is for grades 2 through probably 6, and then the 4S, 4 skills, is for grade 7 and above. But because we're not even at 2nd grade yet, and we definitely needed to have some sort of language proficiency tool, assessment tool, we use the ELLOPA, the ELLOPA. And that is really designed for those primary grades based on teacher observation and either one-on-one contact with the students or the teacher observing the students speaking to each other.
Yeah, so in our modified SOPA assessment that we do with 4th through 8th graders, it's more like an interview with 2 students at a time. So we'll pair up 2 students. Typically, we'll be intentional on the pairing, so we like to pair a more proficient student with a less proficient student, so the more proficient student can serve as a language model for the less proficient student. And we bring them in, we record them, and we have a conversation. Within the conversation, I build in various tasks, so there'll be a intentional task that they're to complete. So sometimes I'll have a picture sorting task, and then they'll have to narrate about the pictures. I built in conversational prompts between the participants, so they have to ask each other questions and answer and then report back to me. So every round of assessment that we do, I sort of modify it and I'll change the tasks because it does become stale if the kids are doing this twice a year and we have to do the same thing again, that kind of thing. So I'll try to change it up and mix it up. But it's pretty informal, it's not a grammar test, it's not a writing exam, it's just a communicative task to see how well they can perform spontaneously with the language. And then when we rate that, we take into account their listening comprehension, so that where they're following the directions carefully. Do they need repetition? Do they need me to slow down at the pace I was speaking? That kind of thing. And then we take into account the text type and their fluency. So are they speaking in words, sentences, or full-blown paragraphs? Is the language coming out pretty fluid, or do they need to pause and think quite a bit? Another thing we take into account is the grammar, so how well formed are the utterances they're producing? Is it typical Ojibwe, or are there things lacking? And I think when we get the results, when we get the data and do the ratings, it really informs the instruction as to what's missing in our programming, and are we maximizing output to an efficient level to where they're sort of sounding like the models. And then the other area we look at is their vocabulary. So do they have a extensive vocabulary, or is it mainly generic terminology?
This is a triangle of stages of Ojibwe that we like speak. So the first stage is usually when we're like little kids and we only know like a few words like buju and like bowing and stuff. And then the second one is like where we start to understand like sentences and the way like how you put words together. And this one, right next to this one, is like paragraphs and more like complex words. And the top one is most of the elders, because they know a lot of words and like stories.
With our Ojibwe language and our Ojibwe lifestyle, there's a specific vocabulary for every sort of thing we do. Being that it's a verb-based language, if you've never been engaged in that particular activity, you're probably going to be at a loss for the terminology to adequately talk about it. Though a highly proficient kid can get by with generic vocabulary and circumlocution, but we like to see the vocabulary grow as well with their language ability. So that really is the core of my teaching. I really try to beef up our older students with an extensive vocabulary. I'm always getting words from elders and folks more proficient than me, and then bringing them back to the school and teaching them to the kids so they can carry them on for us.
So we also made strides as a school with regards to the Hawaiian language proficiency of our students. We have a school-wide standardized Hawaiian reading comprehension test that's been in place for many years. But 2 years ago, we were able to take the ACTFL assessment, translate that. Took us many meetings, a lot of work. And we have an oral language proficiency assessment that we assessed all of our kids. That took a long time because there's only a few of us that can assess the kids. And it takes a long time to assess everyone because it's a conversation. You're trying to see how proficient they are. And so we interview all of them at the end of the school year. And this will be the third time coming up this May that we'll do that. So the kids have a conversation with the kumu, the teacher, and the teacher talks and asks questions and has a conversation, and then looks at the criteria based on the ACTFL proficiency levels and determines the level of proficiency for each student. We also did it as staff members back in the beginning. So the other modes right now aren't school-wide. There's no standard school-wide assessment for the other modes like the listening and the writing. So those are the two we rely on right now for proficiency.
So you can see that while the various programs develop different types of language assessments, what they all had in common were that their assessments were designed around what worked for their particular program and team and students and language. That's really key. Like Mike was sharing, making this work for your program and for your students. You'll also notice that all of them were designing assessments that were for use with multiple age levels that could be used for many years to come. So not creating something that's only going to serve you for a very short time period. So think about your own assessment. Does it truly meet the needs of your program and of your team and of your students? Does it work for both the grade span that you're currently serving right now, but also those grade levels that you want to expand into in the future? So I want to discuss one final key to sustainability. When we heard from the programs at the start of the webinar, and what I often hear from all of you is that what truly makes your program special and unique, effective, and important is that students are learning through their culture using traditional methods and activities and in their native language. So this is our last and I think most important key. So let's visit our programs once more to see why this is so integral to the long-term success of your program.
The elders always told us that language and culture can't be separated. So that is something that we've really strived to keep that at the forefront of our thinking, and when we develop curriculum too. Like, go to the sugar bush and there's math, there's social studies, there's language arts, there's everything. All the content areas are integrated in all of our activities.
As far as the success that we've seen here at Wadukadating, I think the main contributor to that is people who believe in our language and people who believe in our way of life as a people. I think it's really hard these days, you know, a lot of our more mainstream counterparts believe that our success needs to be measured in comparison to the Western world, and that success in education is measured by test scores and is measured by other sort of gatekeeping models that have always been at a disservice to our people. So I think the success here lies in a totally different approach. It's not our mission to educate these kids in the same system that has consistently failed us since its inception. I think the key to our success here at Wadukadating is taking what our people have valued here for centuries, that made our people a dominant force in this part of North America for centuries. And what was it about that? What was the value system like? What was the diet like, the lifestyle, the spiritual mindset, and somehow finding a way to incorporate that in our academics. So when the kids get through learning different content areas, different subjects in school, it's all framed in a Anishinaabe context. It's all framed in a way that's familiar to them, that's highly valued by them and their families. And I think that's what leads to our success, rather than just translating English textbooks and going for this one-to-one match with our colonizers. We sort of scrap that model, and now what is it that sustains us? And we see like academic success with that. I think when you build up a child's pride and identity and who they are, they're much more likely to succeed in school. And I think that's the key. That's the key ingredient to any of these kind of programs.
There we go. I think that clip really drives home what's been said over and over, that the biggest strength of your program really lies in that seamless integration of language and culture with academic learning, which really in turn builds strong, resilient Native youth that have both the academic skills, life skills, and traditional knowledge to be successful in their future endeavors and really positively impact their communities. So we are going to go just a scotch over time, but I don't want you to miss out on any of the important information. So we're going to go just a hair over. I know some of you may have to join your Zoom classes. All right, so I'm going to invite Lisa to come back on with us. So as one of the founders of Wadukadating, how has this element of really integrating the culture and the language and the academic learning impacted the success and longevity of your program?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
No problem.
It was quite long. I'm just starting to space out at the end of the day.
No worries. So I was just asking about how this element of integrating the culture and language and academics all together has impacted the success and the longevity of your program.
Yeah, it's been amazing, actually. You know, when you start with a really small group of people, like when I look back when we started, I really had no idea how it would grow and blossom, and all the people who have joined over the years have contributed to like, how do we get the kids outside? Like, that's been our, you know, we've really strived to incorporate outdoor learning and seasonal activities that really connect us to this land. This is ours, this is where we're from, and the language is here. It's all intertwined. So it's really kind of an amazing thing to look back at the very beginning 20 years ago and see how far we've come. And it's just really amazing.
Well, I'll say when I talk to the kids in the program, that's always the things that they've pointed out to me have been some of their most impactful learning experiences. Because like when we were doing the filming, we got to sit down with some of the older students who have been in the program their entire educational lives. Those are the things that they've really said have been super impactful for them as well.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, as a reminder, if you have questions for any of our guests, make sure to put those in the chat box because we are almost to Q&A. But as we begin to wrap up our look at key considerations for program sustainability and how the lessons learned from our promising programs can help you in your future planning, I want to wrap up our time together with one final video, how I typically like to end our time together on our promising program showcases with a video of words of wisdom and advice from our promising program sites.
I think another thing, you got to take into account when you're a new program is make sure you have realistic expectations for your program. Make sure you're realistic with your deadlines, realistic. I think some people will jump into immersion and want to go K through 8th grade starting this fall. And I really encourage people to start slow, make sure you're well staffed, make sure you're well funded, because you're going to work harder than other teachers. The other mainstream teachers that are teaching in a colonial language have an advantage of centuries of literature and curriculum at their disposal. Whereas folks working in endangered indigenous language, you're going to have to make your stuff. So I think adding grades gradually, and having a team of people working towards expanding your programs rather than it all falling on teachers, I think that's some pretty good advice for people moving forward, is carefully plan and be realistic with what you're doing.
Like I was saying earlier, you find it what the reason is you're doing this within yourself. You have this opportunity with this grant to get some funds to bring language to your children, to your people. Use this opportunity to get started on this journey, because this journey it's a lifetime journey to bring back your language. To bring back your language, your culture, your songs, to bring back all these things of who you are as a people and bring them back to life and keep them alive within all of your people. And this is a start. This is an opportunity to create a place, to create a school which can be the start of all of that. And even if it is already within your community, this school can be a center for where your language is spoke every day again. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring back our language, and you got to create places for that language to live. And a school can be one of those. Our hope and our dream is that our language comes back to our homes, and that parents and families are speaking it within their home and teaching their kids within their home. That's our ultimate goal, is that it's alive within our homes again. But the school can be a central place where you can come together as a community to talk and help keep it alive. And maybe that spreads, maybe you create another school, and so then you have a second place for that language to survive and to be spoken every day. And then it's used within your ceremonies. And then maybe you have a store and it's starting to be used in there. That's our hope, is that it'll start small, and this is an opportunity to get that going, to create a place where language is alive every day.
Be patient. This is not something that just goes quickly. This school is 20-something years old, and we still have our times where we're trying to ho'ikaika or make it better, and it's a constant learning process. I'm not gonna say like we got it. We still can ho'ikaika. We still can make it better, and we are actually going to, a couple of us kumu staff and haumana are gonna fly to New Zealand in the summertime to go and look at the Maori culture. And because their culture, you can see as their language, their Maori language is thriving. And for us, being in Kona, you don't really hear the Hawaiian language too much in Kona. Just maybe right here, or even in the supermarkets that the kids are in. But you'll see when you go to Hilo, it's a whole different story. The language is alive and thriving. So that's our goal, is trying to continue the language and making it strong. So for those people who are watching this, patience, because it'll come. You'll have your bumps in the road, and you just have to work as a team and believe, have that goal in mind. And those three things are faith, hope, and love, and you'll be able to succeed.
The advice I would give to someone just launching an immersion school or program or class, anything, it's going to be hard, but it's worth it. And the outcome or the result won't be really immediate. You'll have little celebrations along the way, which that'll keep you going, but it's really hard work, and it's not really, I mean, people, it's kind of like a fad right now. I feel like people on the surface are like, yeah, you know, it's good to do that, but really deep inside there's a lot of things that work against us, and you just keep going. You remember why you're doing it, and you remember your ancestors, and you keep going, and don't give up. That would be my advice.
Our little pledge, go back to the pledge, stop these stem kicks, jump and miss, you know. We will never give up. That's the main thing. There's gonna be lots of moments down here, a lot of things that aren't gonna go your way, but if you give up, then that's it. If you're gonna give up, don't even start. If you're serious, you'll keep going. You'll work hard. Try to have as proficient a staff as you can to start with. It'll save time down the line. And just keep your heart. It's all in your It doesn't have nothing to do with how smart you are or anything. It's how big your heart is. That's it. That's my advice.
I think one of the things I've learned since I began here in 2010 is that we really have to believe what we believe, and that is there are things that are much bigger than one human life or lifetime. And that if I've told my employees this and their frustrations, that you will never see the benefits of everything you're doing right now. You will never get to witness the day that we dream of, where there's just people speaking all the time, all over our homelands. There'll never be any parade for you. You'll never get to ride in, a victory parade. This is a long process that we're just one part of. And I think the point of that advice is it really requires you be patient and purposeful in all the decision making you do. And that's with yourself, with each other, with everything that happens.
I guess define excellence for yourself and work towards that goal. Know that that line is going to change, and that's a good thing. Know that what your ancestors did is what the world is looking for now, and that you have the key to a lot of the challenges that we can't even imagine that the next generation might face, and hold on to that and persevere through that. It's hard work, there ain't no doubt. It's not for the weary. It's not for people throughout this movement and our movement have given up time away from their families. They take their children to legislative hearings. They take their families to go and cut and paste and make curriculum. That is a family activity. So there is sacrifice in it. But you do that with the idea that it's the sacrifice for the next 7 generations. And that's what your ancestors did. And so you're just in line with that. And always look for ways, don't let it, well, for me, is when somebody tells you no, know that that's really not the answer. You have to think of what your yes is and map your yes out as it relates to reaching your goal and what that excellence looks like for yourself. Yeah.
All right, so I hope you found that as inspirational and encouraging as I did. I'd like to ask one final thing of all of you as we're just launching this not quite traditional school year and looking forward to the future of our sustained native language programs. Let's pause for a minute to set 2 goals, one programmatic and one personal. So over this next school year, what is one goal that you really have for your program? Think about your sustainability plan as you're setting this goal. And then think about yourself and set a goal for yourself. This could be an education-focused goal around things you want to learn or accomplish this year in your work setting. Or it could be to just set aside some me time this next year. You've all been working incredibly hard, not only these last few months of virtual learning when you've all rapidly become expert virtual educators, but also really just over the last 3 years of this grant, and honestly for most of you, many, many years before that. So really take a moment to appreciate all of the hard work that you and your team have put in as you set these 2 goals for the next year of your work. So I've asked a few of our guests today to share the goals that they've set. If you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to share your goals, one or both of them, in the chat box as our guests share theirs. In the interest of time, I'm just going to grab a goal from 2 of our guests. So if 2 of our guests feel like they have their goal, if they're ready to share, you can give me a little hand and we'll take it away. All right, Mike, take it away.
All right, so I won't take up too much time here. I think program goal, kind of my professional goal this year with the COVID and shutdown and online stuff. I'm a linguist and I'm an egghead. Linguists are typically eggheads. So my goal is structure-based. This year I want to graduate this year's 8th grade class with a mastery of the TA paradigm with regard to the immediate person. So that's a grammar goal. Past 2 year 8th grade classes, they've been pretty accurate with their verb inflections about 75% of the time. So trying to beef up the output that happens on this online learning platform is a huge goal, maximizing the output of what these kids are doing online. So that's my goal, and I'm striving for it, man, and then I'll reset a new one if we get there. But our kids speak great Ojibwe, man. Our 8th graders that leave here, they speak great Ojibwe, but like all of us, there's always a better way to say it. So never be satisfied. Our work's never done.
Exactly. But I think you'll achieve that one. I've met these kids. I think they can do it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we'll take one more of our guest goals, and let's see. Brandon, do you have one at the ready?
Sure, I'm gonna actually piggyback off of Mike. You know, again, COVID, we need to persevere through COVID. We can't let COVID derail us, because COVID is temporary and this is long-term work. And as Mike said, the work is never done. So just continuing to look for meaningful ways for students to be engaged linguistically and culturally, even if it's virtual. And, you know, of course, continuing to outreach for ongoing staff and students. And then a personal goal, and I don't know if it's really a goal, but more of a reminder, is our work is never done. And so it's not, I mean, I have countless checklists all over the place, and I feel like they just keep piling up. And so a goal for me is just to remind myself the goal is never to be done. It's just ongoing, continual improvement and advancement, and not to get frustrated when at the end of the day, your quote unquote work is not done and you still have more to-do lists.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out to everyone that joined today, my colleagues from around the country. I appreciate your guidance. We're still a new program, and appreciate all of the hard work and the years of knowledge and experience that you have brought to this. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think you both kind of touch upon that same idea that I hear from so many programs, and I think it's wonderful that, yeah, we're never done. There's always more that can be done for our students and for our families and for the preservation and revitalization of the languages. So just continually striving more and more and better. So we've covered a ton today. Thank you for sharing your goals. If anyone still wants to pop one in the box, you're welcome to, but I encourage you to have your other team members that maybe weren't able to join us live today to engage in that same goal setting, check in with each other on these goals throughout the year. Now, if I've looked over there, I haven't noticed any specific questions for our guests right now, but if you were just waiting, you can pop those in. But we have our last poll. So we'll pop that up in the middle of the screen. Was this showcase beneficial for you and or your program? Nice, easy yes, no poll that you can take quickly, because we are wrapping up our showcase. I do want to remind you not to sign off yet, because we do have a quick feedback survey. Sarah Whitehead has popped that in the chat box as usual. It is super short. It will take you 2 to 3 minutes. So I would appreciate if you would take a moment to complete that feedback survey. We've really enjoyed having all of our amazing guest speakers on today and getting that virtual sneak peek into their programs. We thank them for taking the time out of their days to join us live, and all of you for taking the time out to join us live as well. We hope their advice and tips prove useful in your planning and your programs. Remember that we did record this session, so if you have team members who weren't able to join live because they were busy in the classroom or maybe had to jump off a little early to start their classes, we'll be sending out that link next week, or if you subscribe to the playlist, you'll get notification that way. But thank you for joining us today, and remember, you can always contact us at sbrightwell@seiservices.com, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.